I am Elia Monroe, 32 years old, living in the suburbs of Seattle. In my family's eyes, I was nothing more than a walking ATM, a faint shadow they only noticed when there was something to take. Lily, my 13-year-old niece, had her birthday party right at my mother's mansion. 30 people crammed into the living room. Alcohol, laughter, hollow conversations about vacations, cars, and things I was never invited to, despite footing most of the bills. I stood there, silently handing Lily her gift, a brand new phone worth $850. The gift her mother Emma had casually labeled the bare minimum when she'd texted me last week. Lily peeled off the wrapping, her expression so indifferent it sent chills down my spine. She smirked, her teenage voice cutting through the chatter. "Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, nobody would even notice." Her words landed right in the middle of the noisy room, making everyone burst into laughter as if it were the best joke of the night. I stood still, feeling like I'd just been slapped in front of 30 people, yet no one found it inappropriate. Emma sat cross-legged on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, her lips curling into a smug grin. She didn't bother to look at me, but I caught the satisfied glint in her eyes when her daughter spewed out those words. My mother, Linda, hovered in the kitchen, stirring a pot of stew, pretending not to hear, though I saw her shoulders lift slightly. Silent approval sent to her precious youngest daughter. My father, Patrick, didn't even hide it. He let out a dry laugh, raising his beer. "That kid's not wrong." Laughter spread like an oil slick, engulfing the room. The cousins I only saw during holidays joined in, snickering like an audience at a cheap comedy show. I heard every laugh, felt every mocking stare wrapping around me. "Thanks for the phone, Aunt Elia." Lily squinted, leaning into her mother, not bothering to mask her boredom as she glanced at the expensive gift in her hand. I swallowed hard, my chest burning, but my face held the familiar social smile. All these years, I had learned to stand still, nod, pretend nothing happened. Finally, Emma looked up, locking eyes with me. In that split second, I saw it, that flicker of satisfaction in her cold blue eyes. She wanted me silent, invisible, humiliated. "Everyone, time to cut the cake!" My mother's shrill voice rang out, trying to coat the room with a fake warmth. I walked into the kitchen, leaning against the counter, listening to the fake cheers as the candles flickered. The sugary scent of the cake mingled with the bitter taste clinging to my throat. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palm, but I didn't say a word. No one noticed me standing there, or maybe no one cared. And maybe they were right. But in that very moment, something else stirred quietly inside my chest. Something cold, patient, sharper than ice. I didn't need to respond. Their mockery said more than enough about my place in this house. I gently set my glass down, stood up, and pulled my phone from my bag. My fingers moved across familiar apps, bank accounts, credit cards, bills, all under my name or backed by me. I used to foolishly believe my generosity was the glue holding this family together, but tonight, I saw the raw truth clearer than ever. 2 simple taps. Disconnect. I froze Emma's secondary cards, canceled every credit card my mother used for her lavish spending, shut down the savings account I had set up for Lily. Electricity, internet, phone services. I cut them all. Everything disappeared in minutes. I stood silently in the kitchen corner, the glow from my screen reflecting on my face. My fingers didn't tremble. Every move felt like muscle memory long embedded in me, waiting for this exact moment. Outside, the cheers grew louder as Lily blew out the candles. Nobody noticed I had already stepped out of their noisy circle. I left through the back door. Not a single head turned. That night, I didn't return to my old apartment. Instead, I drove to the lake house in Tacoma's outskirts, a place few in the family knew about, where I once dreamed of peaceful weekends, only to see it turned into their noisy party ground. I locked the door, turned on every light in the house, then opened the closet to pull out an old, worn black backpack. It had followed me everywhere during my college years, and now I was pulling it out for a different purpose. I didn't pack clothes, nor did I take any personal belongings. I carefully placed inside only what I wanted them to see. Bills, documents I had kept for the past 5 years, undeniable proof they had lived off me, and every empty promise they had tossed aside like trash. When I returned to my mother's house at dawn, the place was still brightly lit, music still blasting from inside. I slipped in like a ghost. No one noticed. I left the backpack under the staircase, where they would be sure to find it when they woke up, then quietly walked away. That backpack was my final message to them, and also the period at the end of this chapter. I drove out of the neighborhood, feeling like I had finally removed a shackle that had been strangling me for years. When I stopped at a small roadside motel, I didn't turn on the lights or check my phone. I left it silent in my bag, as I had decided to remain silent toward that old world from this moment on. I pulled back the curtains, looking at the yellow glow spilling from the few stores still open late. No one called, no one searched. They hadn't noticed I was gone, at least not yet. But I knew they would soon. And when that chaos began, I would be somewhere far away, outside of the whirlwind of demands, obligations, and the shameless entitlement I had endured for so many years. This time, I didn't need to scream, didn't need to argue. I just needed to vanish, just like Lily had said. Only this time, my disappearance would leave a void they could never fill. I woke up later than usual in the quiet hotel room, soft sunlight slipping through the curtains. My phone still lay silently on the nightstand, but when I picked it up, the screen was flooded with missed calls and messages. The first message came from my mother. Just one line. "Doing this to your family. Don't you feel cruel?" I pressed my lips together, scrolling through the avalanche of texts from Emma, my sister. Every line dripped with venom, like she'd just been waiting for this chance to lash out. "You think you're so noble, Ellie? You're nothing but a coward, selfish, hiding behind us your whole life thinking you're important. You think the family will side with you? Dream on." I set the phone down on the table. Everything was playing out exactly as I expected. It didn't take them long to realize that my absence dragged with it all the things they had once taken for granted. Around 9 p.m., loud banging shook the hotel hallway. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. I sat still on the bed, calmly making myself a cup of coffee. "Open the door, Ellie," Patrick's voice roared from outside. "You think you can do this to your own parents?" The doorknob rattled, followed by heavy fists pounding so hard the door shook. "I know you're in there. You don't think you're so smart. You're nothing without this family." I sipped my coffee, the bitterness spreading across my tongue, but it was still far more pleasant than their venomous words. The banging continued for a few more minutes, then stopped. Outside, only the sound of an engine revving and angry cursing echoed in the hallway. I didn't rush to check my phone, but I knew more accusations would be waiting. And just as I expected, the screen lit up with a flood of new messages. My mother texted, "How could you do this to your parents? We're family, aren't we?" I scrolled past without reading the rest. Emma continued her barrage of insults. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are. A woman no one will remember when she's gone." I let out a faint smile. Every word only gave me more reason to stay silent. They had grown used to me backing down, letting them dictate everything, never having to face rejection. Their panic seeped through those messages, thinly masking the truth. They were terrified of losing the one person holding their perfect facade together. I dropped the phone into my bag, not replying to a single message. That afternoon, as I walked along the lakeside, the phone vibrated again. A call from Emma. I let it ring until it stopped on its own. Minutes later, a text appeared. "Don't think you're so special, Ellie. You'll be crawling back to us." I laughed out loud. Not because the threat scared me, but because they never really understood me. They mistook my silence for weakness, my tolerance for helplessness. That night, I rented a small apartment near the coast, locked everything down, tossed my phone in a drawer, and powered it off. The room was quiet, only the sound of waves crashing outside the window. For the first time in years, I exhaled a deep, freeing breath, as if a boulder had finally been lifted from my chest. Out there, I knew they were spiraling, angry, desperate. But inside, I found a stillness they would never be able to touch. That stillness was enough to let me sit alone in the dark and smile, calmly, as if the world outside had never existed. I thought the banging on the door and the hateful messages were their final act, but I underestimated my family. 3 days later, when I returned from the grocery store, still holding the shopping bags, I froze at the doorway. The lock had been changed. I stood there, staring at the slightly ajar door. My heart didn't race like it used to. I opened the door, walked in, and wasn't surprised to see my parents standing in the middle of my small living room, eyes blazing. "You think you can lock us out of your life?" Patrick roared, his face flushed red with fury. My mother, Linda, stood beside him, her hands trembling but her eyes filled with defiance. In a family, there's no such thing as locking doors. "You think you're all grown up now. They used to invade my life with calls and texts. Now they did it literally." I took off my coat, hung it neatly on the hook, and carefully unpacked the groceries on the table. Not a word. No reaction. "Ellie, you can't behave like this. Family is forever. Have you even considered how this makes us feel?" My father barked, his voice hoarse. I turned on the stove, made a cup of tea. Once the water boiled, I calmly placed the cup on the table and pulled out a chair to sit. "Feelings? Feelings while you spent my money like it was your right?" My father paused for a moment, but quickly returned to his angry mask. "That's your duty. We're family. You owe us." I laughed, but this time it wasn't bitter. It was the laugh of someone who had finally broken free from the chains. I owe no one. I've paid it all. Every bill, every gambling debt, every lavish vacation you rewarded yourselves with from the money I sent. I've paid for years of silence just to keep this relationship looking normal. My mother cut in, her voice shrill. "Ellie, you can't forget what family has done for you." I stood up, my tone calm but firm. "And what exactly did family do for me, Mom? Was it those times you left me alone in the hospital because you were off on vacation? Or was it when I paid the electric bills so you could keep living in comfort while I ate instant noodles?" My father clenched his fists, stepping closer, his eyes bloodshot. "Don't you dare talk back. You think you're better than us?" I didn't step back. "No, I don't think I'm better. But at least I know how to respect others. Something you never did for me." My mother burst into tears, but this time, I didn't feel a thing. I was no longer the small, cowering girl in the kitchen corner begging for scraps of attention. I pointed directly at the door. "Get out of my house. Right now!" My father roared, his fist raised, but I stood still. He stopped, his eyes hollow for a brief second, as if he too realized this show was over. My mother sobbed. "You'll regret this. No one defies family and stays happy, Ellie." I closed the door behind them, listening to their heavy footsteps stomping down the hallway, fading into the distance. No dramatic ending, no smashing, just an ordinary afternoon ending in cold silence. I locked the door, replaced the locks, changed the security code. I knew they wouldn't give up easily, but I hadn't expected their desperation to sink this low. On Monday morning, as I stepped into the lobby of my office building, the atmosphere was different. My coworkers glanced at me with pity. I quickened my pace toward the elevator when one of them grabbed my arm, whispering, "Ellie, someone's causing a scene in the main lobby. I think it's your family." I didn't need to ask more. My steps slowed. Through the glass, I saw Emma standing in the center of the lobby, waving a stack of papers, shouting nonstop. "Everyone, did you know? She's a fake, a two-faced liar." The receptionist tried to stay calm, but the confusion showed on their face. "She's my sister, kicked the whole family onto the streets and now pretending to be some classy woman here? You people work with someone like that?" Emma's words cut into the normally peaceful air of the place, drawing the stares of customers and staff alike. I stood still, quietly watching the scene like an outsider. Less than 10 minutes later, security arrived. They asked Emma to leave the building. She resisted, crying, even tried to push one of the guards as they reached out to escort her away. As the security firmly led her out, I walked past without a glance back. My coworkers looked at me with sympathy, but I simply gave a faint smile. They thought I would crumble, but the truth was, I was used to these pathetic theatrics. That afternoon, when I returned to my apartment, I wasn't surprised to see a crowd gathered right out front. My mother, father, Emma, Lily. The whole bunch stood there like bad actors in an old tragicomedy. They held up a sloppily written banner that read, "You can't turn your back on your family." I stood still on my third-floor balcony, looking down at them. Under the dim yellow light, they looked like shabby shadows, clinging to the illusion that I would cave, like I always had. My mother's shrill voice echoed, "Ellie, open the door. We know you're in there." My father screamed like a madman, "Get down here now. You'll regret pushing your family to this point." Curious neighbors peeked through their doors, some quietly recording videos. I didn't feel ashamed or angry, just empty. I called the building security, as calmly as ordering a pizza. When the security team arrived, I leaned casually against the balcony railing, arms crossed, watching the familiar scene unfold. "This is private property. You're disturbing the residents. Leave now or we'll have to call the police," the head of security stated firmly, leaving no room for argument. My mother started sobbing, clutching the gate as if it was her last thread of hope. Emma hissed, "You'll pay for this, Ellie. You think you've won? You have no one." I quietly watched them being escorted out of the property, the crowds scattered like dirty puddles after a rainstorm. The apartment door closed softly behind me. I made myself a cup of tea, settled onto the sofa, and savored the gentle bitterness on my tongue. Outside they could scream, make a scene, gather an army to drag me back into that swamp. But inside these walls, I set the rules. And the rule was simple. No one gets to step into my world again. I thought everything had calmed down after the last time security dragged them off the complex grounds. But I was wrong. They never knew what limits were. 4 days later, a message from my father popped up on the screen. "Ellie, let's talk, just the two of us, no one else." Attached was a photo of the old stadium on the outskirts of Bellevue, where he once promised to take me to watch games, promises that always turned into empty words. "We need to settle this like adults. I promise no one will bother you. Just come." I knew it was a trap, clumsy, predictable, but this time I wanted them to see exactly who held the upper hand. I packed the black backpack, not with clothes or personal items, but a thick folder of documents. Every bill, loan agreement, bank record. Undeniable proof that they had leeched off me for years, while treating me like I was beneath them. That afternoon at the stadium, the crowd roared, loudspeakers blaring over the deafening drums of a packed game. I walked through the sea of people, heading straight to the section my father indicated. A row of seats oddly empty in an otherwise sold-out arena. He was already there, gripping the old black backpack I had left at the house. "Finally decided to show up, huh?" He waved at me, his smug half-smile plain as day. I sat down, the space between us tight as a stretched wire. "What do you want, Dad?" He leaned in, his voice low and laced with threat. "You think you're clever? Walking out, cutting us off, playing your little rebellion? You left that bag. We saw it all. We know everything." I didn't blink, kept my voice flat. "Know what, exactly?" "Don't play dumb, Ellie. You think you can hide it forever? Stealing from the family, setting up your own accounts? Deceiving us all? You're nothing but a thief." I almost laughed. Exactly as I'd predicted. They'd spun their victim's story, painting me as the traitor. "Then open the bag, Dad. Read it out loud. Let the entire stadium hear how much I stole." My father flinched, His hand gripped the backpack strap until his knuckles turned white. Don't play games with me, Ellie. I don't need to see it. I already know. Really? I raised an eyebrow, purposely raising my voice above the roar of the crowd. Then let me help you. I pulled out the stack of papers from the backpack and threw them across the empty seats. Here's the rent I paid for Emma for 2 years. Here's the gambling debt you racked up in Reno last year that I took a loan to cover. Here's Lily's tuition, the phone I bought for her. All eyes around us began turning toward the commotion. Papers fluttered like dead leaves, falling across the seats. Anything else you want to say, or should I keep going? Like the time I saved the house from foreclosure while none of you bothered to say thank you? My father's face went pale. He tried to grab the pile of papers, but those sitting nearby started whispering and pointing. Oh, is she? I think she's his daughter. Looks like a scene from a movie. I stood up, looking him straight in the eye. You used to say I was nothing, didn't you? Now I'm showing you. I'm the one who carried this family, and now I'm wiping my own debts. My father was speechless, his shoulders slumped. I climbed the steps, passing curious faces without looking back. Behind me, his voice echoed weakly and shakily. You'll regret this. No one's on your side, Ellie. I didn't stop. His voice faded into the roar of the cheering crowd. This time, he was the one left lonely in the middle of the crowd. My phone rang, non-stop, from morning to night. Calls and messages flooded in like an endless storm. It started with my father. From his usual harsh threats, he quickly shifted to the tone of a defeated man. The first message nearly made me laugh. Ellie, let's talk. We're family. We can't let it come to this. At 3 a.m., he called again. I let it ring, the sound echoing through the quiet room. Ellie, I don't want us to be strangers. I'm old. Don't have long left. My father, who once yelled that I was ungrateful, was now begging me to come back. The sudden change didn't make me feel pity. It only made me feel sorry for him. Then came my mother. Linda wouldn't leave me alone, sending photos via text. Family sitting in a dark living room, a single candle flickering on an empty dinner table. We have nothing left, Ellie. Do you want this family to fall apart? She even sent a voice message, her sobbing voice repeating phrases like, needles piercing my ears. You're killing your parents. You'll regret this. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the following messages. I let everything slide across my screen like waves hitting the shore, knowing that even if I stayed silent, they would eventually fade away. And Emma, who used to be so arrogant, quickly lowered her tone more than I expected. From vicious insults, she shifted to a pathetic, shameless plea. Ellie, I'm sorry I shouldn't have treated you that way. I'm just scared. I didn't know it would get this bad. You know I'm struggling. Her next message surprised me most of all. Ellie, just help me pay this month's rent. Just this once. I swear it's the last time. I sat in a small lakeside cafe, staring at my phone, glowing with desperate pleas. Outside, the city buzzed on, no one caring about my small family drama. I put the phone down, tilted my head back, staring at the ceiling. No tears, no guilt, only a strange peace. My family was falling apart, but not because of me. Because of themselves. I didn't cut them off. They did it to themselves when they made me their bottomless wallet, then turned their backs the moment I stopped giving. Now they were panicking, begging me to come back to keep that perfect facade from crumbling. But I was no longer the safety net they once knew. That night, I sat on the balcony, watching the distant city lights. My phone buzzed again. A video message from my mother. In the video, I saw my mother, Linda, sitting on a worn-out sofa with my father and Emma around her, all of them looking hollow and vacant. Ellie, we're about to lose the house, do you understand? Dad is seriously ill. Emma lost her job. Lily is being shunned by friends. I fast-forward through the video, ending on Lily crying in the dark, clutching an old stuffed animal. They once made me feel invisible. Now, my absence has turned them into ghosts, wandering their own home. I turned off the phone, placed it in the drawer. No reply, no reaction. Silence was the perfect answer. Their problem was no longer my problem. In the weeks that followed, my phone was almost silent, but I knew that across the city, my old world was slowly rotting away. My father got fired after an outburst at a board meeting. I saw him lose control, throw documents at his boss, and then receive his termination letter that very afternoon. Emma was shunned by friends after the stadium incident spread like wildfire through Bellevue's small groups. People gossiped, mocking her as a freeloader who felt entitled to judge me. My mother? She retreated into silence, living like a shadow in a house growing colder by the day, with electricity and water cut off after bills piled up unpaid. My family, the perfect picture they once painted for the world, was falling apart piece by piece. And me? I was living, free from lies and invisible burdens. I moved into a small apartment by Green Lake, where I could take leisurely morning walks under old oak trees, savoring hot coffee without rushing to check messages or unpaid bills for someone else. I learned to enjoy the small things: a homemade breakfast, an afternoon spent planting, a quiet evening reading by candlelight, not because of power outages, but because I liked the gentle glow. No more demanding phone calls, no more family gatherings where I paid but was treated like an outsider. I didn't change my number, I didn't move, but they didn't dare call anymore. My silence taught them I was no longer the easy mark dragged back into their desperate pit. Sometimes I heard news from old acquaintances. My father sold his old car to cover a house deposit, but still couldn't manage 3 months' rent. Emma applied at a small company, but was rejected after Google searches revealed videos of her disrupting my office. It all passed by me like old news, no longer stirring me. I stopped being the family's shadow. I learned to live slowly, truly myself. Alone in a small kitchen, I baked. Not for anyone, just because I loved the scent filling the room. I learned to breathe deeply, free from burdens, free from anyone pressing down on my chest. I wasn't lonely. I was alone, and that was a difference they'd never understand. One October afternoon, as the city wore the orange hues of falling leaves, I walked past the little cafe where I once begrudgingly paid for stifling family meals. I stepped inside, ordered an apple pie, sat in a quiet corner, savoring every bite like someone tasting freedom's sweet flavor for the first time. No familiar faces walked in. No one called my name. No one demanded I be anyone other than myself. I smiled, not because anyone made me, not because anyone was watching, but because I felt light. And I understood. Freedom isn't running away. Freedom is standing still, facing your past without letting it chain you again. One late autumn morning when the maple branches outside my balcony began to change color, I woke earlier than usual. No alarm, no messages, no urgent calls from a relative who assumed control over my life. Just a soft silence, like a blanket gently draped over my shoulders. I made coffee and stepped onto the balcony. The chilly breeze brushed my cheek. From my third-floor apartment, I saw Green Lake's surface ripple with gentle waves. On the far sidewalk, a few elderly people walked dogs leisurely. A little girl rode a bike, her brown hair flying in the morning sun. No one I knew. No one forcing me to perform. And I didn't have to force a smile or pretend to be normal at a stifling family dinner with people who never truly listened. I sat in my familiar wooden chair, placed my coffee nearby, and opened my leather journal. No financial plans for anyone, no bills to pay for others, no reminders of someone else's responsibilities. Just a few lines of journal entries, some scattered ideas, a few greenhouse sketches I planned to build in the apartment garden. I realized that for years, I never really needed them. I was only caught in a vicious cycle called family, where I was taught that love meant enduring, and giving meant never expecting anything in return. But in truth, love should never be a one-sided sacrifice. And now, I'm no longer that side. I don't seek revenge. I hold no grudges. I simply chose to walk away, quietly, decisively, without looking back. They live their lives the way they choose. And so do I. Sometimes, I still hear news from the other side. A neighbor told me my mother's house was seized by the bank, my father is living with an old friend in a shelter, Emma is posting job ads in online groups, and Lily... No one talks about her anymore. I used to think letting go was the act of a loser. But now I understand. Sometimes the one who dares to leave is the only one strong enough to live honestly. Once, while walking near the farmer's market, I heard an acoustic guitar playing from a street corner. An old ballad, simple sounds that touched the deepest part of my soul. I stopped, stood still, and listened until the song ended, not because anyone asked me to, not because I had to please anyone, just because I wanted to. When the song finished, I dropped a $20 bill into the guitar case, then nodded softly to the street musician. No words, no explanations. He nodded back, eyes neither judging nor probing, just the silent understanding of two strangers who had experienced what no one else could see. I turned and kept walking, each step lighter than before, and I knew I had walked out of a room with no windows, a place I had thought was home for so many years. The sky that day wasn't too blue, nor was it windy, but for me, it was enough to breathe. And that was enough. Ellie's story is proof that sometimes letting go is not weakness, but the bravest act of self-preservation. In real life, many remain trapped in toxic family ties, bearing responsibilities that aren't theirs just because of blood. But happiness doesn't come from unconditional sacrifice. It comes when we dare to set boundaries, choose our own path, where we can live as ourselves, free from manipulation or bondage by borrowed guilt. What do you think about Ellie's choice? Was she too harsh, or was it the only way to break free from a painful cycle? Leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories coming soon.